In this tutorial we're going to look at how the electrons are arranged in a variety of elements. For the syllabus we need to know the electronic structure for the first 20 elements, which takes us up to calcium. Here's calcium here with a proton number of 20, so it's got also 20 electrons. We need to be able to write or draw any of these first 20 elements in the periodic table. And rather than having to draw the individual elements, we can write the electronic structure by simply writing down the number of electrons in each shell, starting with the first or the smallest, in other words the one closest to the nucleus, and working outwards. Here's magnesium with 12 protons and 12 neutrons in the nucleus and 12 electrons around the outside. 2 in the first shell, then 8, and then 2 in the outermost shell. So we'd write the electronic structure as 2.8.2. Here's one of the isotopes of chlorine. 17 protons and 18 neutrons in the nucleus, and being a neutral atom will have 17 electrons, 2 on the first shell, then 8, and then 7. So the electronic structure of this one would be 2.8.7. And now we'll see how we can use that electronic arrangement to work out whereabouts the element would be in the periodic table. Or vice versa, we could look at where an element is in the periodic table and work out what its electronic structure would be. Let's have a look at these then. Let's look for lithium. Sorry, it's a little bit small, but here's lithium here. It's got 3 protons. So, with 3 protons, lithium is going to have an electronic configuration or electronic structure of 2 followed by 1. The second one, sodium. Sodium is here. Sodium's got 11 electrons. So sodium is going to have 2 on the first shell, then 8, and then 1, making a total of 11. Finally, potassium. Potassium is underneath sodium, and that's got 19 electrons. 19 is going to be 2 on the first shell, then 8, that's 10, then another 8, that's 18, and 1. And we notice that all of these 3 elements, which are in group 1 of the periodic table, have all got 1 electron in their outer shell, and that's no great surprise. If we had to identify an element with an electronic configuration of 2, 8, 5, there's a couple of ways we could do this. First of all, we could add the 2 and 8 and 5 and work out that it's got 15 electrons, and therefore it's also got 15 protons, so it's going to be here's phosphorus with a proton number of 15. The alternative way is to use the 3 numbers. That tells us how many shells it got. On the periodic table, this is the first shell in the first period filling up. This is the second shell filling up for the second period, and this is the third shell. So we know it's got 3 shells, so therefore it must be somewhere along this period here. We also know that there's 5 electrons in the outer shell, so that's the group number 5. So when we read down and across, those 2 lines cross at phosphorus. So recapping, there is a connection between the electronic structure and the periodic table in that all the atoms in the same vertical group of the periodic table all have the same number of outer electrons. If we know the number of electrons, we can work out the electronic structure, and from that the group of the periodic table. So if an element has got 9 electrons, its electronic structure will be 2, 7, and so the group it's in is group 7. With 18 electrons, it's going to be 2, 8, 8. Now the group here is actually called group 0. It used to be called group 8, but it does tell you that it's got a full shell and therefore none in the very outermost shell. And with 19 electrons, it's going to be 2, 8, 8, 1. So that one is in group 1. So 2 key words, groups and periods. Periods in the periodic table are these horizontal collections of elements, and as you go from left to right across a period, then one of these shells is filling up with electrons. Groups are the vertical sections of the periodic table, and all the elements in the same group have got the same number of outer electrons. Here's an exam question. This is about atomic structure. Look at the diagram. It shows the electronic structure of an atom. Look at the diagram. An element contains atoms with this electronic structure. Which group of the periodic table is it in? Well, let's have a look. For the group, we look at the number of outer electrons, and we see it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 outer electrons, so that's going to be in group 4. And how can you tell it's in period 3 of the periodic table? Well, we look here for the number of shells of electrons. The first shell, the second shell, the third shell. So it's in period 3. It has 3 shells of electrons. And there's our answers. It's in group 4 and it's got 3 occupied shells of electrons. Another question. Electrons are arranged around the nucleus in shells. The electronic structure of calcium is 2,8,8,2. But so what's the electronic structure of phosphorus? Okay, let's find phosphorus. Phosphorus is here. It's got 15 protons, so it must have 15 electrons. It's got 15 electrons. The first shell will have 2 and then be full. The next shell will have 8, and the final shell will have the remaining 5. Now that must be right because it's in the 1, 2, 3rd period, 1, 2, 3 shells, and it's in group 5, which means there's 5 electrons in the outer shell. And there's our answer, 2, 8, 5. And bear this in mind, as in all questions, your answer that you put on the dotted line on the exam question is the one which the examiner will look at. So if you've shown some working somewhere else, unless you've crossed out the answer on the line and made it very clear which your answer is, the examiner will look on the line for what they think is your answer. Here's another exam question. This question is about elements in the periodic table. Look at the list of elements and choose all your answers from that list. Now, each element can be used once, more than once, or not at all. Periodic table on the back page may help you. Remember, that's referring to the one on your exam paper. Write down the name of an element with 8 electrons in the outer shell. Well, that's going to be one of these elements which is in group 0 with 8 electrons in the outer shell. I know these are going to be helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, or radon. And the only one which is in that list is neon, so the answer here is neon. Write down the name of an element in the 4th period of the periodic table. Okay, 4th period, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, potassium, calcium, blah, 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 blah. Okay, one of those could be, for example, I think potassium, copper's knocking around there somewhere. Bromine, I think, is as well. I'm going to go for potassium. And the name of an element with an electronic structure of 2,4. Well, that's got 6 electrons altogether. It's going to be in the 2nd period and the 4th group. That one looks like being carbon. And there's your answers. For the 1st and 3rd question, there's only one possible answer. You can give the symbol as well, of course. But yeah, that second one, either potassium or copper or bromine are all in the 4th period.